everybody. Welcome to episode 1 of Golf News RI's RI Amateur Series. I'm Joe Calabro, co-founder of Golf News RI. Over the next couple of weeks to a month or so, we're going to have a bunch of different amateurs on playing in the lead up to the RI Amateur in July at Kirkbride. And I figured there's nobody better to start with than the defending champ. As John Cena once said for you wrestling fans, the champ is here, and that's Jamie Lukowicz. Jamie, thanks so much for doing this, and how are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. It's been a long year with a long winter, but excited to start 2021.
Absolutely. It's going to be a really fun golf season. You're super busy, obviously, with golf and everything that's going on. We'll get into all of that. So you're a month out from the RI Amateur, and as you just reminded me, you're just weeks out, really, from the Northeast Amateur. So with those two events kind of coming up almost back to back, I think there's maybe a week or two in between, whatever it might be. Right. But what's your preparation like at this point in the
Yeah, so unfortunately, usually we have the Burke in the middle of the start of May for the season, but we haven't had that in a couple of years. So basically, you start with the fall ball, which is going to be over at Valley next week, and then you jump right into the amateur. But fortunate enough, I can play in the Northeast this year, so get a few more rounds before the amateur, which will be nice. So.
How excited are you for the Northeast Amateur, playing against some of the best players really in the world? They come from all over, best amateurs in the world, some of the best college players, obviously, as well. But how excited are you to get that opportunity?
Yeah, very excited. I mean, it's a great golf course. It's one of the best in the state. I'm sure the conditions would be great. I heard they widen the fairways a little bit, which is nice, but I'm sure the greens are going to be fast. Those kids are just, they're basically, amateur pros. I mean, a lot of those guys you see have won in the past, Dustin Johnson. I mean, the list goes on and on. So a lot of those guys, whoever wins, basically goes on to be a pro and succeeds very well.
Absolutely. My favorite Northeast Amateur memory is going with my uncle a bunch of years ago when we saw Peter Uline win, and now I follow him on, I think he's on the Corn Ferry Tour, if I'm not mistaken, but right. Obviously there's a bunch of examples. Uline, Colin Morikawa won the event. He obviously just won a major last year, so we follow him, and I was there when Ricky Fowler played way back in the day.
Yep. The list goes on and on with not only the people that have played in it, Anthony Kim, but Jordan Spieth. The list goes on and on. So it's an honor to play in it, and I'm excited.
Absolutely. So that's going to be really, really exciting. Obviously, Golf News RI will have coverage of all that. You and Mike Hamilton are both playing, so at least two rounds in the field. Okay. I'm not sure if there's any others off the top of my head, but I'm sure there are a few scattered around.
I'm sure there's a few, yeah.
So let's talk about the RI Amateur. Let's spin it. I want to spin it forward, obviously, to July, but let's spin it backwards just for a second. Take a stroll down memory lane. Last year, obviously, you made an incredible run over at Pawtucket Country Club. I was there every single day, and no one knew who I was because we had just launched Golf News RI, so I kind of just stayed in the background and sort of just, observed and made notes and whatever. But talk about that week and when you reflect on that week, or maybe you analyze that week, analyze the matches. I'm sure you replay these things in your head over and over again, like we all do. What strikes you? What do you remember about that whole run?
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of my friends talk about this every year. So when you qualify for the event, not the pre-qualify, but when you actually qualify at the site, it's 36 holes. So people don't realize how important it is to actually, not just get in, but to be, do as well as you can. It's almost like a tournament within a tournament, because the lower the seed you are, typically the better off you are to make a longer run. So that's what I try to do every year. I try to get as low as I can to try to get in that good seed, good bracket, and and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. So I was fortunate enough to be the 3 seed. So with that being said, I had some good matches, great matches. And then my semifinals was against Bobby Leopold, came down to 18. And, he hit it. I remember I hit it 20 feet. He hit it 8 feet. It was a front left pin, which they never have that pin there. So I ran it by about 4 feet and he just missed. So I had to make a 440 just to win the match. And, I would say that was I wouldn't say more stressful, but it was a stressful, but more than I'd say the next day. It was weird, but that's how it goes.
Absolutely. Then the championship match against Andrew O'Leary, obviously star at Notre Dame right now. Talk about, obviously, for those that don't know, the amateur finals, a 36-hole marathon. And if my memory serves me correct, and I could be wrong, but you never trailed in that match, right? Or if you did, it was early on. So I remember you lengthened the lead after the first 18.
Right.
That the challenge of that, and coming in, Andrew O'Leary, obviously he was the defending champ at the time. He dusted the field in the medal play, and he was kind of cruising through match play. I know my friend Mike Hamilton believes he probably should have beat him in the semifinal, whatever that was.
Right.
Talk about that match and playing against a young star like Andrew O'Leary.
Yeah, that's crazy about match play. I mean, any day anyone could beat anyone. It really is. I mean, especially at 18 holes, typically 36. The better play is going to end up scratching it out, but 18 holes usually, well, not usually. Sometimes you can get an upset or two. But yeah, I mean, Andrew's a great player. I mean, he hits the ball a long way. And, maybe fortunate enough for me, I played the course, even though I was a member, I played it a lot more than he has. So I know where to miss it. I know I don't have to overpower the golf course, even though he probably did. His wedge game probably wasn't where it should have been. And, his putting was a little off, but, as was mine, I really didn't hit the driver as hard as I could have or should have. I just kind of placed it out there and just kept going. So fortunate for me, I was able to hit first on a lot of the holes, which put a lot of pressure on him, even though he may have had, one or two lesser clubs, on a lot of the holes. For me, it didn't really matter. So, and no, I did not. I don't think I wasn't behind at all. I remember he made a putt for birdie on, I think it was 4, and then for birdie, and I was inside and I made it on top of him to have the hole, and then I ended up birding the par 3 to go ahead, and that was it.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact sequence, but I remember the 18th hole of the first 18, the final hole of the first 18. I remember that was I thought that was a huge turning point in the match. I don't remember exactly the sequence, but I know
I do.
yeah, wanted to just take us through that, because I remember that being a huge turning point at that moment.
It was a big turning point in a way, because I was 1-up going down 18. He didn't hit a very good drive. I think he hit a left, and usually that rough on the left-hand side 18 is probably the thickest on the course. I had a good drive, and that pin was back right, and he hit it in the bunker, and I hit it on the green about 20 feet. I didn't want to be too aggressive because he was in the bunker, and he's more than likely going to get up and down, but I didn't want to throw it over the green and lose a hole, and all of a sudden the momentum changed. So I hit it about 20 feet, and of course he kind of flubs out of the bunker, so he's got like 25 feet. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is probably going to be 2-up, going to the ladder 18, and of course he makes it. And that's what's crazy about match play is he basically didn't have anything to lose, because it's, if he makes bogey, I could just 2-putt win the hole anyway. So he rammed it in, and I'm like, oh, here we go. So I had the 20-footer, and I ended up rolling it in. So it was big, even though I bogeyed the first hole or the 19th hole after lunch. But having a 2-up lead was it was nice.
Absolutely. So you go on to win. You go on to all kinds of local fame, amateur champ, and now let's spin it forward to this year. And before we get to the actual amateur, I do want to ask you this, because we've been covering the qualifiers. Obviously, there was one a couple of weeks ago, or whatever it was, at Swansea. There's one on Monday at Foster, and then the final one, I believe, is in 2 weeks at Crystal Lake. I could be off on the dates, but it's something along those lines. For obviously, you don't have to qualify; you're exempt. You're the champ. But for these guys that are qualifying, and I know you told me off air, you've played plenty of these things before. What is the pressure like? I mean, I know we're just talking about a state tournament here, but there is pressure to qualify. Is it one of those situations, Jamie, where there's almost more pressure in the qualifier than there is once you get to the actual amateur? And obviously, the amateur has its own pressure. I understand that, but just as far as you're in the amateur, hey, I made it, kind of a sigh of relief. Do you think that's the case, or what is going through these guys' minds here during these qualifiers?
Yeah, it's tough, because I remember my first amateur qualifier was at Wannamoisett, of all places. I mean, they don't do that anymore, but so my first big tournament was at Wannamoisett. I've never played on greens that fast, and it was scary. So I ended up shooting 88 my first time out there, and I was technically a 1 handicap at West Florida Country Club at the time. So I thought I could just go out there and play well enough to get in, and it wasn't the case. So it was a learning curve right away. And ironically, the cut was like 81 that day, which goes to tell you how hard that golf course is. So yeah, I mean, years forward, if you don't have enough points, you have to qualify. And my last qualifier was at North Kingstown Country Club, and it was a while ago. It was probably like 15 years ago. But again, you have to get in, and you think par's good enough, but then you're like, okay, all of a sudden you make a couple of bogeys, you're like, uh-oh, what's a cut going to be? I can't make any more bogeys. So you kind of put a lot of pressure on yourself, unfortunately, instead of just going out and having fun and just, try to make birdies. If you try to make pars, more likely not, you're going to end up making bogeys. So if you try to make birdies, you end up making a lot more pars, and that's my scenario or the way I try to look at things. So yeah, so back to your question, it is, it is kind of, it's a weird atmosphere. It depends on the day. If you ever played the course before, Forster Country Club, I grew up in Coventry, so I played Forster a bunch of times. And I have a buddy actually qualifying next week, and or whenever it is. And it's shorter, but it's quirky. So you never know. You could shoot 72, you could shoot 82. So you just got to keep it in front of you and hope for the best.
Absolutely. Yeah. The qualifier is Monday at Foster. Like you mentioned, it's going to be 90, 95 degrees or something. So the weather won't be a problem.
And in Forster, it'll probably be 105.
Maybe. So that's coming up on Monday, obviously. So now let's talk about the amateur. This year it's at Kirkbride, my home course. Super excited. I had so much fun covering it last year at Pawtucket. This year is going to be even more fun because it's a home game for me. And I'm going to set up shop right upstairs and
nice
and crank out articles and whatever other content. But anyways, what do you think of Kirkbride as a course? What's the thought heading into the amateur at Kirkbride? The last time it was there, I forget the year offhand. Was it 2006, 2004? I know Tommy McCormick won it.
Yeah, Tommy won it that year. Yep.
I can't remember the year offhand, so excuse me. But just talk about what do you think of Kirkbride as a course?
Yeah, I like Kirkbride a lot. A lot of people think it's a little quirky with the par 5 in the back, but the green's a little weird. But they fixed the 9th green, they fixed the 18th green, which is huge. I think they just need one more green to fix it. It's 16. Once they do that, I mean, the place is, I heard they're actually redoing 16 a little bit. I know Hamilton's a big part of that, which is nice. He's such a good kid too. And I know he's one of the favorites, especially from being there, but he's obviously very talented. But yeah, Kirkbride I love. I mean, ironically, I almost won the Rhode Island Open there years ago. Probably, I don't even know what year it was. God, probably 2010 maybe. They had the Rhode Island Open there, and I believe I had a 2-shot lead with like maybe 12 to go. And it was just one of those 2 days where everything was going in, and the course fits me pretty well. And I forgot who ended up winning it, but a kid from URI had won it. But point is, I like the course. I think it's fun. It's challenging. Some got some long holes, and hopefully I get at least 1 or 2 practice rounds in before that day or that week.
A lot of talk around the club has been all the home course advantage for guys like you mentioned, Hammy, Tom McCormick, and others. And that is that really a thing? Because in the amateur, it's completely different. I mean, Andrew O'Leary was you mentioned you played more rounds at Pawtucket than him, so perhaps that wasn't a true advantage. But do you look at those guys and say it's going to be tough to beat these guys on their home course, or is the amateur just a totally different animal?
I think sometimes it puts more pressure on you.
Yep.
It does, because I remember I was at Metacomet in 2015. That was my second year there, but the greens were running. I mean, got 13 that week, but it's one of those. Should you win it? It's match play. You never know, but should you do well? You would hope to. But again, match play, anyone can beat anyone, and you don't want to put too much pressure on yourself because before you know it, you're in the middle of the pack in the qualifier, and then you end up meeting like a Bobby Leopold in the first round. You're like, oh, here we go. So again, it goes back to trying to do as well as you can in the qualifier. The 36 holes, and then go on from there. But again, to your question, I think it goes both ways. You can put a lot of pressure on you, but you can also feed off that and say, look, no one's going to beat me this week, at my course. But if you get ahead of yourself, you can fall back pretty quickly.
Absolutely. And I know there's a bunch of young players trying to make it. When you look at the young crop of players, whether it's and not all of them are going to be playing, but obviously you know a lot of them. You're a veteran amateur at this point. You have the Mike Hamiltons. You have Bobby Leopold's not young anymore, but when you look at the field and see these young players coming up, whether they're playing in this amateur or not, obviously we've been done a lot of coverage of Davis Chatfield and Patrick Welch. What do you, when you look at these young guys, what impresses you and what stands out to you?
Patrick's a good friend of ours. I mean, I know he lost his pop not too long ago, which breaks my heart. And I know he's been struggling a little bit at Oklahoma, but he had a big win at the beginning of the year. But Patrick, if you're listening, love you, kid. Such a good guy. And Davis, I don't know too well, but I know everyone speaks very highly of those guys. And I saw what he did at the U.S.
Four ball.
Football. I mean, just incredible. But again, I kind of wish they were playing, but somebody told them not too long ago that if you play in these events, it actually hurts your overall world ranking, which unfortunately, that's why they're not playing. And this will be the second year they're not playing, which I kind of disagree with, because, you know, it gives you more competition. You know, why not play in another, even if you don't win, who cares? If your rankings drop a little bit, it is what it is. I mean, you know, but if you go ahead and win it, it's a great acclimate. And, you know, I think it gets you more prepped for, you know, things moving forward. So unfortunately, I don't think they're playing in it because of that. And I don't know, we'll see.
Do you think does that hurt the RA amateur? Obviously, was there anything people can do, or the state can do, or Riga can do? I don't know what the answer is, but to raise the status of the amateur, I mean, how does that kind of work to get these kids to come back and play? Is there something that people can do?
Yeah, that goes back. I think that goes back to basically, I think the USGA, the way they, I don't want to say manipulate, but the point system. If you look at the world ranking, the point system. So say I was to win the fall ball next week, or the Burke, because it's only 2 rounds, they don't equate that to points. It has to be a 3-round event, which is fine. So that's why a lot of these guys only play in 3-round events. That's why their world rankings, they're so high, because they play in all these things all the time. So, you know, that's why they have 20 events a year. But I think it should be changed, because it kind of defeats the purpose of these kids, you know, getting out there. I mean, Davis won it a few years ago at Point Judith. You know, I don't even know how old he was. I think he was like maybe 17 at the time. Yeah, but and he's such a good ball striker. Like, why not go and try? And if you don't win, you don't win. I mean, say you drop 20 points in rankings, it's not like it's not like your coach at Oklahoma is going to say, "Oh, Patrick, you didn't win the amateur, so we're going to bench you." Or, you know, Davis, you know, you came in second. You know, come on, you got to win the thing. But I think it's, you know, I don't know who's telling them that. I don't know if it's the coaches, but I know, you know, again, they haven't played in the last couple of years. And, you know, again, I'd love to go out and play them. If I get beat, I get beat. If I beat them, I beat them. You know, both of them can, I don't say they can be on tour, but, you know, they're very good players, and I'd love to play them. So.
Absolutely. I know you're going to get out of here. So let me ask you this, without giving anybody bulletin board material, but going into the RA amateur, who's the favorite?
There's a lot of guys. I mean, again, it depends on the week, depends on your, it's kind of crazy. Like, you see the PGA Tour, like with these big events, you know, their tee times. If they get a good tee time, and, you know, if it rains on Monday morning and I have a late tee time on Monday, that benefits me. So, you know, it happened again last year, where actually 2 years ago too, when I was over at Shelter, you know, I ended up getting 2 rounds in pretty dry, even though my second round was atrocious, but, you know, it rained a good portion of that week. And again, last year at Pawtucket, it rained for a good day, and it kind of throws people off. So I think if you get a good tee time, and, you know, just go out there and play, and, you know, it just, like I said, I think I do a tournament within a tournament. So I try to win the 36-hole qualifier, and then I move on from there. So again, to your question, I don't know. I mean, I mean, Hamilton, you know, being a member there, he and Tommy, I'd love to play Tommy again. He's one of my good friends. I beat him last year. Yep. I got him good last year. So hopefully I get to play him again.
Absolutely. It will be it should be a lot of fun one way or the other. I know you got out here. Jamie, thanks so much for coming on the show, and we'll talk to you down the road. We'll certainly see you at the Northeast Amateur, and we'll definitely see you at the RI Amateur in about a month. So this has been episode 1 of Golf News RI's RI Amateur series. Like I mentioned, over the next couple of weeks or so, month, we're going to try to get as many players as we can on. Some of them will be featured on the Golf News podcast. Others will be random interview like this. Either one is fine. Whoever works for everybody is good with me. So, Jamie, thanks so much for coming on.